Hi, I'm Neeraj and I have Shalab with me. Both of us are going to take you through different APIs which are available in Fusion corporate channels, which we would be calling in short form as FCC. Idea is to give you an overview of APIs which are available in FCC. Before we give you an idea about APIs, we'll give an overview about Fusion corporate channels itself. Then the use cases which can be used, then the APIs which are available currently and what are planned, and towards the end we'll give you a brief demo of this. So let's look at what is Fusion corporate channels. So Fusion corporate channels is for corporate customers, and using this channel corporate customer can connect with banks different systems. It acts as a bank's front-end system, and corporates can either use browser or they can use their mobile phone, or they can use their ERP systems, tablet, etc. to do business with bank. If we look at different domains it supports cash, where one can check balances, can check statement, initiate payments, has a lot more bulk services and can initiate term deposits also. Second major domain is trade finance. So corporate users can work on all their trade finance need via the single channel. Either it is letter of credit, bank guarantee, collections, bill financing, or undertakings. Similarly, supply chain finance is another module. Fourth one comes lending and then treasury module. So you across all those 5 domains, it's a single channel which supports corporate customers' needs. At the back end, it connects with banks' different systems, either it is core banking side or liquidity management or trade finance or supply chain finance and so on. Let's move on to next slide. So here we are going to tell you about different API use cases. Primarily, we'll talk about 2 use cases which we have. First use case is where banks, fintechs, partners can make use of these APIs and create a completely new UX layer which banks can control by themselves and make use of underlying FCC APIs capability. Now, using these APIs, one can connect to different backend systems, whether it is trade, supply chain finance, payments, cash, liquidity management, treasury, lending, and so on. And they can actually create a simple unified customer experience. So if anybody wants to create its own UX layer using these APIs, it would be quite easy for them to do that. Or one can create their own widgets and cards and include it in FCC dashboard if they are not happy with the current set of widgets which are available, or they want to enhance it, increase the number of widgets. That is another possibility. Because different partners can work on this, fintechs can work on it, so one can create a completely ecosystem over there. Banks can differentiate their offerings and services using these APIs, or they can aggregate data from multiple sources and use analytics tool and create a different set of information what they want to show it to their clients. And in fact, there could be a combination of this data and widgets where banks or fintechs can take this data, do the analytics, create a different type of widgets and make it available via FCC dashboard. Second use case is where banks can extend these various features to their mobile app also. So banks and fintechs can build persona-driven apps and services, thus providing a contextualized and relevant experience to end users. These wide range features available on Fusion corporate channels can be extended to mobile app as per the bank, fintechs, as per the intended design or flow. So basically, banks can create their own mobile app, and using APIs, they can offer all those variety of features to their corporates, who are primarily on the go. And also banks can take advantage of technology drivers in mobile area, like fingerprint scanner or face authentication, and these kind of features they can use either to enhance user experience or to add additional authentication, more like a two-factor authentication or three-factor authentication for their corporates. Now we will take you through the details of the APIs which are available as of now and which are planned by May 2020. I'll request Shalabh to take you through the details of these APIs.
Thanks, Neeraj. I'll walk you through the APIs which have been hosted by FCC over FFDC. So these are majorly focused towards cash and the trade services side of the corporate. So we have listed all these APIs and marked them in the pink color, and each of these APIs, the endpoints have been added as the bullet points below. So I'll walk you through some of the major APIs now. In cash, so we have payments initiation API, which allows a corporates to initiate a fund transfer request to the bank. So a corporate, they raise a lot of requests for fund transfers to their own accounts, to their vendors in the same geography, or even to counterparts across the world. So to initiate those transfers, the fintech can build an app or an application out of it using these endpoints. Some of the endpoints are like internal fund transfer, domestic fund transfer, third party, and MT103 transfers. To enhance our existing APIs, we are also including the multi-entities corporate setup and the cross-currency fund transfers. Moving on from payments to transactions. Now, once a transaction has been initiated, the corporates can view the transactions which have been initiated. They can also fetch the details of a particular transaction and the user who has acted upon. So this API gives complete details of a transaction. Then we have another API on approvals, which allows a corporate to approve or reject a certain transaction, first by checking the details and then doing an action of approve or reject. Then once a transaction has been done, the corporates, they can fetch the updated account balances, the posting details, the account details of that account to make any decision. Moving on, then we have a few set of APIs which are called as supporting APIs, which are used in order to support the payments initiation scenario. One is on the corporate profile, one is beneficiaries, FX rates. A corporate profile provides an information to the API consumer on the user information, on the corporates, the bank, entities, and what all access does a particular corporate user has. So this API can be used to populate certain static information about all these areas listed. Then there is beneficiary maintenance API. So for all the payments which have to be initiated by the corporate, so they have to be done either by creating a beneficiary beforehand and then registering it. So this beneficiary maintenance API allows the corporate to create different type of beneficiaries based on the fund transfers and then do a set of actions like creation, deletion, approval, and reject. So this whole beneficiary maintenance API allows all such actions. Then for all the cross-currency transfers, the corporates also need to know the FX information which is maintained by the bank. So the corporates, they can fetch the FX rates for the currency which has been requested, and they can also fetch the equivalent amount. So accordingly, they can make a decision whether to go ahead with the transaction or not. The next one is on the term deposits, which is like a fixed deposit. So this API will allow to create a request for a term deposit, which will go to the back office. Once back office creates a term deposit, which is like a manual process right now in any of the back offices, we can fetch those and display those term deposits in using the APIs. And the corporates can also give request for updation as well as withdrawal for those term deposits. Moving on from cash to trade, right now trade is under development, and that's why everything is marked under planned by May 2020. So there are a lot of different APIs which have been planned under trade. So the primary flow under trade is on the letter of credit, and which has two sides. One is the letter of credit on the import side, and one is letter of credit on the export side. So again, the corporates using these APIs, they can request for creation of a new letter of credit. Once created, they can also inquire about the LC by fetching his details using these APIs. Then there is another action which is on the amendment on both instruments. So they can create a new request for amendment and again view the details. Similarly for export. Then there is another feature which is on the import collections or bills. So here there are different actions involved. Each action is again a different endpoint or a different path, like view bill, the acceptance, bill acceptance, the bill refusing, viewing the settlement instructions, and creating a payment transaction for the bill. Similarly on the export side. Then another API on the trade finance is on the financing, where the corporates, they can initiate a financing request on the different invoices, and then once that is done, if they want to settle the invoice, they can also request for a settlement using the payment API. There is another common API which is called as Contact Bank Help Desk. This API can be used by any of the corporate to send a message to the bank for variety of options which can be provided by the bank. For example, in this case, the first endpoint Contact Bank Help Desk options provides that list to the corporate, that what all services can be requested using this particular feature by the bank. For example, if the bank allows change of address via this feature, then the user can select that particular option as a change of address, and they can send that request to the bank with the requested details. Once that has been done, the details can also be viewed as part of a Contact Bank Help Desk message details endpoint. And finally, we have one more API which is on static data. This is also a supporting API which will be used across other features or as a supporting API to populate the list of countries and currencies to allow the fund transfers or LC initiation transactions. So these are some of the APIs which have been planned by FCC by May 2020.
Okay. Thanks, Sharaf. And here is the barcode for anyone to access FFDC and see these APIs. Now we'll give you a brief demo, which is built using these APIs, and it was done fairly quickly. I think it took almost 10 to 12 days by a single person to build this demo. So the scenario which is getting covered is of mobile apps, where someone initiates a transaction from corporate channels, that is using browser. Because it's a corporate transaction, high value transaction, treasury receives an alert for approval, he is on the go. So he quickly takes his mobile phone out, checks the balance and approves the transaction. And in this process, there are multiple APIs which are used from FCC. Okay, so with this background, we are going to show you a quick video. So this is a scenario of mobile app where transaction is initiated from browser, and then it will be approved by treasurer. So first we are saying Fusion Corporate Channel. It is a browser based application where initiator will initiate a fund transfer. You can see he is getting into the domestic transfer initiation screen, selecting the account number from where transaction needs to be initiated. Selecting beneficiary whom payment needs to be made. So it happens to be Herbalife. So he is initiating a transaction for 75,000 GBP. Now he has submitted the transaction and it needs to be approved by treasurer. You can see a transaction reference number 991 is created. Now James, the treasurer, logs in via his mobile app. Okay, so now James is going to list, he's going to view the list of transactions. He opens the 75,000 GBP transaction, checks the balance, looks at sufficient money is there. He decides to approve the transaction. Now using these different APIs, one can create different dashboards, different type of insights, different graphs. So now once treasurer has approved, payables manager actually, whenever he logs in again, he can check the status of the transaction. It shows what is the status. So just to summarize, here we have shown you what all APIs are available from Fusion Corporate Channels. You have lots of cash APIs available, trade APIs. You can make use of these APIs to build innovative applications which help our banks and corporate customers. So wish you good luck. Thank you.